It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, I'm Tyler Habney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome to Dungeons and Dystopias. I'm Tyler Habney, your host, and today I am joined by a professional game master and a personal friend of mine, Cam Stedman. Cam, why don't you say hello?
Hi.
Hi.
That's what I got.
So Cam here works at a location, a store, a game store, and he dungeon masters the games there for them on a weekly basis.
So the games for Sweets and Geeks have been they were on a weekly basis. I did one game on Tuesdays where I was teaching people how to play, generally newer players, younger players. Then I did a second game, generally on Thursdays, where it was just we were running through Shadow the Dragon Queen, a very fun campaign.
Oh yeah.
Then I also do over at the Highland Library. Actually, I'm contracted to teach middle schoolers to play D&D.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that part.
That's a newer one.
Well, that's interesting. How's that been going for you?
It's been going good. I've had full tables for our summer one that we did. The winter one's going to start on the December 3rd,
Okay.
and I'm looking forward to that. I don't know if it's going to be the same people or not, but I'm kind of hoping it is. The group I had was really fun.
Well, I mean, middle schoolers do tend to have some pretty creative ideas when it comes to problem solving.
Yeah, a lot of it involves just running at the problems and hitting them with a big stick.
See,
But
that's what you need, though. That's the kind of that's the kind of attitude you really need when it comes to middle school D&D, huh?
yeah, for some of it, trying to teach them the intricacies of politics and governmental powers and how to talk to people is the harder part, but they have the combat nailed.
I'd hope so. Believe it or not, I don't think D&D combat is that hard, but we're going to be kind of talking about that a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say, the easier part of it. It's the part where more math is involved generally, and people hate that. But
yeah, people hate math, despite loving math rocks or dice.
Correct. As someone that I didn't bring it, but a massive chest of dice, I hate math.
I gotta say, I also hate math, but it's just kind of the situation you're stuck in when you're a dungeon master.
Yep.
So let's kind of get into it then. You came in today. We're here to talk a bit about Dungeons and Dragons 2024. For those listening, I primarily have experience running Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. And in fact, I don't actually know a lot about some of the changes in D&D 2024. My friend Cam here, however, has both the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook for D&D 2024 right here. And as I understand it, he also happens to know quite a bit about D&D 2024.
I've done my reading, at least a little bit, enough to learn some of the changes that, at the very least, I want to implement into games that I run, the ones that are definitely worth and easiest to include into 5e games.
Okay, so let's get started with that. What kind of changes do you think are most apparent and you like the most, I guess?
So my favorite ones are the additions of weapon masteries. They're little extra feats that you can use freely, basically, whenever you use a weapon that has a certain quality. So, for example, a dagger would have the nick property, which means you can, when you hit with your offhand attack, you get advantage on your next attack, basically.
Right.
It's free advantage generation, which, if you know anything about D&D, is massive.
Advantage is huge. For those that don't know, advantage is rolling 2 dice and taking the higher number. So it can be pretty insane if you roll a 20.
Yeah, and mathematically works out to about an additional +5 to any hit. Effectively, it's a massive boon.
There are entire classes that are based around trying to find ways to get advantage.
Yeah, the rogue is another one. There's as a class that is one of the crit classes. Probably, I would say the crit class. Generally.
I'd say so.
And
barbarians
for sure. And Rogue has had a lot of changes. Their sneak attack dice are no longer just for damage. They can actually expend them as a resource, doing reduced damage on the attack, but poisoning a target or knocking them prone, things of that nature.
See, now that is interesting.
Yeah.
That does add a sort of new dimension to sneak attack,
Yeah,
I think.
a lot of utilitarian options, which Rogue kind of needed for combat. Rogues were very much pitted to, I'm going to give myself advantage, I'm going to get sneak attack, and I'm just going to do a chunk of damage once a turn.
Yeah, that's pretty much the playbook.
It gets kind of boring, which is I generally would multi-class out of Rogue to get more things to do in combat because it got really boring.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a lot of rogues in my time, and I mean, you're exactly right. The general rotation is which way can get me the highest chance to hit. Hit, sneak attack, turnover.
Yeah, then you see fighters and they're off making 17 attacks in a turn, doing all of the things, and it's you get like envy almost.
Right. It's like, my turn takes 5 seconds. Why does your turn take 30?
Yeah, and there's not a whole lot of I haven't looked at the magic items too much yet, but I know there were a lot of magic item changes all in the DMG. And I'm hoping there's more rogue ones because there's not a whole lot that rogues benefited from in prior editions, and I want more. Rogues are my favorite class, them and warlocks. So I'm looking forward to more boons to them. Granted, they were both already fairly strong. But
Oh yeah, rogues are very strong.
Yeah.
Speaking of classes, are there any maybe like classes you saw got a huge sort of balance bump, if that makes sense, like power level wise?
like an increase or a decrease?
Both.
So I would say increase. I think, well, I'll start with decrease, actually. I think decrease will be easier. Rangers were, unfortunately, Rangers and Paladins both got hit a little bit.
Well, I can understand Paladins, but Rangers is the one that hurts.
Paladins got hit the worst. Unfortunately, I'll touch on them in a minute. But Rangers, they took the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything Ranger, which was solid.
Yeah, it was pretty decent.
And they basically just reprinted it. And instead of having like useful capstone or anything of that nature, any things to make Hunter's Mark work differently or anything, it is just your Hunter's Mark does more damage.
Really?
Yes, it is. It gives you a D10 at level 20.
Wow, that's at level 20.
Yes, that is your capstone. Is your Hunter's Mark does more now.
So the ability most players will never even get. Mm-hmm. No one really goes to level 20. It's just a D10 increase. Monks get that at what, like level 10?
Something like that. And speaking of monks got a whole host of changes, and they're actually good now, which is great.
That's good to hear, at least.
Stunning Strike got hit, which it needed it.
Yes, Stunning Strike was I think the worst part about Monk to DM against.
Yeah,
Stunning Strike is it's just so I don't know. It ruins fun.
Gob Mob, our Monk Stunning Strike a lot of your enemies.
Yes. Yep.
He did a good job of it. Granted, we told him to, but
hey man.
He
did exactly what his job was.
Yeah. Paladins got hit really, really hard. Divine Smite is now a once a turn thing. It takes a bonus action.
Oh wow!
It's really bad.
Yeah, that makes a lot of changes to balance.
I'll pull up the exact verbiage.
Yeah, for reference, in 5e Paladins, it did not take a bonus action to smite.
No, they were easily the best class.
They could smite on all of their attacks, in fact. So if you attacked twice as a paladin in 5th edition, you could smite twice.
Correct.
And for reference, smite adds an extra 3d8 base on your attack.
So I believe it is. Let's see. I want to say it was 2d8 on base and then 3d8 if it was undead.
Yes, something like that. Yeah. I know they did extra damage if it was against undead or fiends.
Which I'm 90% sure is still a thing. I'll double check in a second.
I hope so.
But so Divine Smite is now a spell.
Yeah.
It is. So it's a spell that takes a bonus action to cast, and you cast that when you hit with an attack, and it hurts. It hurts a lot.
I can imagine the potential damage output for paladins has decreased pretty drastically after that change.
That's. I should have this page memorized at this point with how often I flip to it to hope something will change when I read it again.
So just one day you're like, man, I didn't see that single word that changed the entire definition of the spell.
It's very much definition of cope, but we're here. So the casting time, like I said, bonus action, which you take immediately after hitting a target with a melee or unarmed strike. So it does count for unarmed now, which is nice. I don't think it did technically prior.
I do not think you could smite on an unarmed strike. That's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, so that's nice.
Being able to punch someone in the face and then
Yeah.
punch them really hard with the power of God.
Yeah,
That's
and
pretty
anime.
cool. Yeah, and anime. God and anime at the same time.
Paladin Monk got a boost if you do that multi-class, which is
A strange one.
not great.
That's a strange multi-class to do.
Yeah, a lot of very, very multi-attribute dependent, which not a good thing.
Yeah. You have to be reliant on strength and dex.
Yeah, strength, dex, and charisma, and wisdom. That's a lot. That's 4 out of 6.
That's impossible.
Yeah, and you're going to have to sacrifice your con, because who needs HP as a frontliner, right?
I'm going to take a negative in my constitution. My character's going to get sicklier as the campaign goes on.
That can only go well. But yeah, it is an extra 2d8 radiant damage, and then damage increases by 1d8 if the target is a fiend or undead.
Okay.
And then it does upcast as normal, an extra d8 at each level.
Yeah, and that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so it scales well, but it's now a one and done, which sucks.
Yeah,
honestly.
That does kind of suck.
I'm trying to think if anyone else got hit. I know barbarians aren't as big into crits anymore.
No, did they get rid of the brutal critical?
I think they changed it a bit.
Okay.
Let me pull it back up here. Brutal, yeah, improved. So it's brutal strike now instead of brutal critical.
Okay.
And you can. Oh, you get options to do. If you use Reckless Attack, you can forego advantage on one strength-based roll. The attack mustn't have disadvantage. If it hits, the target takes an extra d10 of the same type of damage dealt by the weapon or unarmed strike, which is nice. And you can cause a Brutal Strike effect. So, Forceful Blow, you can push them 15 feet straight back and move up to half your speed towards them without provoking opportunity attacks.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's cute. And Hamstring Blow, you can reduce their speed by 15 feet until the start of your next turn. They can only be affected by one hamstring blow at a time, so you can't completely reduce someone's movement to 0. A little sad, but you know that's in line with how 5e was.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of fair.
Yeah, and then at level 13 you get Improved Staggering Blow, so you can now additionally, if you would like, do Brutal Strike. Sorry. You can Staggering Blow, which the target has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes, and it can't make opportunity attacks until the start of your next turn. Another really nice one. And
nice.
Sundering Blow, before the start of your next turn, the next attack roll made by another creature against the target gains a +5 to the roll, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's really good for a barbarian.
Yeah, barbarians, I think were made better, but they lose their crit focus, which was my personal favorite aspect of barbarians.
Yeah, I mean, brutal critical is amazing.
Yeah,
Being able to roll 3 dice instead of just 2.
It's so fun. And then stacking that with like the piercer feat for the extra damage die and half orc for the other extra damage die, you can get some stupid high dice rolls.
I'd imagine.
It's one of my favorite builds to go with, and it's dead, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They also hit the kind of staying alive infinitely thing with Zealot Barbarian.
Oh yeah.
So
that's a shame. Rest in peace to that build.
Yeah.
The barbarian who cannot die because he's too angry.
Yeah, too angry to die.
So I have one last question for you here, and this one it does kind of concern D&D 2024, but it's more about kind of, I guess, D&D as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So Dungeons and Dragons just got really, I'd say, popular with the mainstream due to both COVID, Critical Role, stuff like that, but also Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
And earlier on, you mentioned that a lot of these weapons were getting their own specific kind of traits, which is something that was in Baldur's Gate 3.
Right.
So I was wondering if you've maybe noticed, are there other design changes that might sort of fall in line a bit with how Baldur's Gate 3 played?
So Baldur's Gate 3 really video gamified a lot of the things, which obviously it needed to. It's a video game.
Yeah, of course.
You can't. There's no good way to do a one-to-one translation from TTRPG into a video game and vice versa. It's 2 different systems, very different mechanics. As far as I've noticed, the weapon masteries were kind of the main thing. Okay. I haven't noticed anything else in particular that's jumped out at me, at least. I haven't played Baldur's Gate in a few months. I sunk hundreds of hours into it and then kind of stopped for a while.
That's kind of my experience too. It's like you play so much and it's like, oh,
yeah.
I've memorized every part of this game.
Yeah, it's hard to go back, especially playing on console, waiting for mod support we're getting close.
Getting close. It's on PC.
Yep, we're almost there. I hope.
Well, all right. I guess that works then.
Yeah.
I think for now, what we should do is move on to our last little segment here.
All right.
Last week, our monster of the week was a metaphorical monster in Solvoil, the mega corporation. Cam has plenty of experience with them. But today, we're going to go back to Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk a bit about Gnolls, everyone's favorite hyena race of demonoids, or I guess are humanoids with demon blood or something like that.
They're a fun race of creatures. They are, like you said, humanoid race, and they have this eternal hunger that was it was a curse bestowed upon them via the god Yinagu. They are just always hungry, hunting for more food constantly. Never able to eat enough. Very reminiscent of the Skaven in the Warhammer fantasy universe.
I'm familiar.
It functions very similarly. Enough that I have kind of stolen some Skaven traits and put them into Gnolls that I run because I think that's fun. I love both of them. Gnolls, the higher up in the power hierarchy you go, the more demonic they tend to get. It's so much so that they have these. Some of them have these flails that do different magical effects that are all very awful to get hit by. A lot of necrotic damage, the ability to stop you from healing, things of that nature.
I believe that's also in Baldur's Gate 3.
Yes, you fight a lot of Gnolls in the very early game.
Yes, in the first act.
Yeah, you can avoid them, but one of my favorite things in that is just the first time that someone stumbles upon the bridge with the hyenas on it, and they hit one, and then suddenly it bursts into more Gnolls, and it's just, it's gross and wonderful.
Yes, by the way, Gnolls are in fact spawned by bursting out of hyenas, killing the hyenas in the process, but of course creating a very new Gnoll.
Yeah, and Gnolls, for the uninitiated, they are these massive, stand on two legs, very humanoid, as was said, hyena creatures that stand around like 7.5 to 8 feet tall generally. Some of them I've heard can get up to 9-10 feet, especially if they were gifted.
Yeah, if they're the big guys in charge.
Yeah, they are monstrous and wonderful. If you need a creature that hunts in packs and is very, very good at tracking your party if you're trying to GM, wonderful creatures to use. I believe they were also used in the start of Critical Role Season 2.
Oh, yeah,
the
absolutely.
Carnival or whatever it was got crashed by a bunch of Gnolls.
They're also kind of a big part of Descent into Avernus, which is there's a whole lore behind the god Zerial and how she defended a village from Yinagu.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes back into it. Gnolls are kind of one of the quintessential D&D races.
1,000%.
So I think that'll be it for us today, Cam.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming in and answering a few of my questions about D&D 2024. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the viewers?
Play more D&D. Find more groups. Come to your local game store and find groups. It's really easy to start, and now is a fantastic time with the rules updating and changing as they are.
All right. This has been Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you so much for listening, and please tune in next week where we talk about Cyberpunk Red and Tales from the Forlorn Hope. Thank you so much.